And I have a guest in studio with me here today, old friend Paul Poirier, who I first met many years ago in a completely different context. Paul is a chiropractor, and I had written a column about chiropractic, which was not particularly favorable, and took objection to that, and we met, and we've been pals ever since. But that's not the reason that Paul is here. Paul is a brain tumor survivor, and he has all kinds of projects to raise money for brain tumor research, which of course is extremely important. So Paul, why don't we start this by going back historically a little bit and fill us in on just how it originally all happened, how it presented, what your medical history was, and what motivated you to basically dedicating your life right now to raising money for brain tumor research.
Well, I was still in chiropractic school, Joe. I was in my fourth year in 1995. It was in April, and I basically was playing tennis on a Saturday afternoon, and I had a grand mal seizure, and I never had anything before that. And I was at school, so I had sort of like in the U.S. in California, and I had I was brought to the hospital. They did the tests, and they didn't know initially what they presumed I had possibly an adult onset form of epilepsy. But then the brain scan got done by the end of the day, and it came to be known that they didn't know what kind of brain tumor it was, but they knew there was something in my brain that didn't belong there. And so then the histology tests got done, and so on. And within a few days, I was made aware of the fact that it was a grade 2 mixed glioma, which means it's partially oligodendroglioma and partially astrocytoma. The oligo you can live with for many years.
Yeah, the astro is the bad stuff.
Astro is the same kind of Ted Kennedy had, for example.
Yeah. And
grade 2 means that it's not the worst you can have, but it's obviously it's not a good one to have either. But nonetheless, now almost 18, 19 years later, I'm still kicking it, despite so many people telling me that I shouldn't be here at this point.
And after you were diagnosed, how long did it take before you had surgery?
Actually, I got diagnosed in April of '95, and then I flew back to Canada. I had the surgery in London, Ontario, with Dr. Del Maestro, roughly a month and a half later. And then I took about a month and a half, 2 months off, recuperated, and then I went back to school.
You had chemo after that?
No, I didn't have chemo. They didn't feel it was justified at that window of time. So I basically just went back to California, finished my degree. I was backed up by a few months, obviously, and then after I graduated, I came back and practiced in Montreal, of all places, for about from '97 till 2008.
And when did it represent?
It came back. It surfaced again in 2005, which is when that happened here. I was diagnosed here the second time around by Dr. LeBlanc at the Montreal Neuro, and they ended up doing recommending that I have yet another surgery, which I did, and so they removed it. But the problem was that I went back several weeks later, and it was determined that I developed a staph infection. So if you ever hear them say that the hospitals are understaffed, don't believe them. They're overstaffed. And so
that's a good line. How are you going to steal that one?
That's right. But anyway, at the end of the day, I had to have what's known as a lavage of my brain, and they basically I went back yet the following year in June of 06 to have a metal plate put in my head. And then I was clear as a bell till about 2010. Then I got re-diagnosed again with another brain tumor. Unfortunately, that time it's in a part of the brain called Broca's area, which is involved with the phonation of words, so they can't really operate. So if they did, I might come out of it mute. So the doctors recommended chemo, and so I did chemo for 24 months.
And now?
And now I go back every few months for a quarterly rescan to see where things are at. And I just had one done. I'll be getting the results probably by next week, and I'll know exactly where things are at this point.
So obviously there's a lot of motivation there for research and for raising funds for research.
Well, that's it. And as you probably are aware, I started the Bikers Against Brain Cancer concept about 4 years ago because one of my own clients passed away of a brain tumor, and so I decided to start generating money, collecting monies for them. So me being a guy who likes to ride motorbikes a lot, I decided to start my own motorcycle fundraiser. And to date, like this year, we collected about $10,000. That's going to be going to the Montreal Neuro for research towards brain tumor. That's with Dr. Petrika, who's my new neurosurgeon.
And how is the money actually being raised? I mean, how? How does the biking work?
What it works is I have a team of about 10 volunteers that help me, and this year we had 150 bikes that showed up, and you pay, we'll say, $30 or $40 to participate for the day. And if you bring your partner, and so there's two of you on the bike, then it's $50. But some people, they end up asking, they kind of get a collection sheet, and then they ask everybody to plug in for $5, $10. So they end up getting, let's say, $100, $200 each. When you add it all up at the end, we actually collected well over 15,000, but we had costs of marketing costs for the radio and things of that nature, so that there's about 10,000, give or take, left over for the Montreal Marathon this year.
Certainly not an insignificant amount of money.
It's not a whole lot, but that's why
every drop helps.
That's right, exactly.
Because it's getting harder and harder to get money for research.
That's it.
And the only way that eventually these kind of problems get solved is with research. But unfortunately, research doesn't progress by leaps and bounds. It progresses by a series of small steps. And you don't have too many eureka moments. It's not the kind of thing where all of a sudden someone say, well, yeah, we solved the problem of brain tumors. It's a long, long process. Now, besides that, I know that there's another story here, and that is that you're going to be starring in a movie.
Well, that all goes back to having gone out of my way to meet with Governor Schwarzenegger, because I presumed he might be the right guy for me to get to know. Number one is he loves motorcycles. Number two, his best friend's a chiropractor. Number three, his uncle was Ted Kennedy, who died of a brain tumor. So I figured my odds were good that he'd want to speak with me. And I took a chance, and I flew down to a seminar where he was going to be speaking. And I spoke to the people sort of in charge of the seminar, and they asked him indirectly if he'd be willing to speak with me, and he was willing to do so. And nobody else out of about, there was 10,000 people at this expo, and nobody else got to have access to him, whereas I got him one-on-one for roughly 10 to 15 minutes.
This was still when he was governor?
He had just retired, and it's before the scandal that he had to go through, about 3 months prior to that scandal.
So what was he like as a person?
He's he's a very stern man. He's all business. I got to say that about Arnold. And so I've gotten to know Arnold over the time. I've gotten to know Lou Ferrigno, who's a much more approachable guy, more of a meat and potatoes kind of a guy.
Although Arnold, I think, took some time out from his business or other business, right?
Well, put it however you like, yeah. So all this to say that I spoke with, eventually Arnold started his own film festival called the Arnold Sports Film Festival, and it was recommended that I make my own film about brain tumors, because the reason I wanted to meet with him was to pick his brain about how would I get this film known on a much broader scale than just my little corner of the world. And so he said, if you made a film and then you submit it into film festivals, then a lot of people would start hearing about it. So I spent about a year getting a local producer to make the film for us, and been lucky enough to, I've been stalking so many different artists to consider becoming the narrators of the film, and I was able to get Jethro Tull's lead singer, Ian Anderson, to actually narrate the film for us as well.
And is this basically your story?
You could say it's a biography. It's a biographical documentary on brain cancer, highlighting how, when you get faced with an adversity such as the one that I've had, you can either let it basically define you, or you could stare it down and try to overcome it. And I've opted for the latter of the two.
And when is the public going to be privy to this?
Well, it's been submitted to as I mentioned earlier, to Sundance, Tribeca, Hot Docs, the Canadian International Film Festival, and it's going to be basically, for example, Sundance is in January. A lot of these festivals only start in 2014, so it's going to be out for about 18 months in total.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to take a break. We have to go to news, and then we'll come back with Paul, because I want to ask you a little bit about Lou Ferrigno.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So we'll chat a little bit more about brain tumors. You're listening to the Dr. Joe Show, CJD 800 News Talk Radio in Montreal. We'll be back after the news.